My name is Baker, and at 36, being a single dad to my 17-year-old daughter, Emma, has been my greatest pride. When she spent 3 days preparing a feast for my mom's 65th birthday, I never expected the text from my father. "We've decided to celebrate at a restaurant. It's adults only." My heart sank for Emma. But instead of causing drama, I chose a different path. 15 hours after our alternative celebration, our door started violently shaking. Before I continue this story, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe if you want more real family stories like this one. Life as a single dad wasn't what I planned. But when Emma's mother walked out when she was just 4 years old, I had no choice but to figure it out. There was no dramatic reason for the split. Melissa simply decided one day that family life wasn't for her. She packed her bags while I was at work, and Emma was at preschool, leaving only a note saying she needed to find herself. The child support checks came regularly for about 6 months before they stopped completely. Last we heard, she was living somewhere in California with a new family. Those first few years were brutal. I worked as an architectural designer at a small firm, and while my boss was understanding, there were countless times I had to leave work suddenly for school emergencies, or when Emma got sick. I nearly lost my job twice, but somehow managed to hold everything together. My apartment became a chaotic mix of architectural drawings, stuffed animals, and frozen dinners. Emma and I became a team out of necessity. By age 6, she knew how to pack her own lunch and pick out her clothes for school. By 8, she was helping with laundry and dishes, not because I forced her, but because we both understood we needed to rely on each other. Our Friday movie nights became sacred, no matter how tired I was or how much work waited. Those nights curled up on our worn couch with popcorn and animated movies kept me going through the hardest times. My relationship with my own parents complicated everything. My father, Richard, had been a successful business executive who never quite forgave me for choosing a creative career over joining his company. Every conversation somehow circled back to my potential and how I was wasting it. When Melissa left, his response was predictable. "Maybe if you had taken that management position I offered, she would have stayed." My mother, Patricia, never directly criticized, but her silence during these conversations spoke volumes. Their relationship with Emma was complicated. They loved her. I never doubted that. But their way of showing it was conditional. When she brought home perfect grades, they beamed with pride. When she struggled with math in 4th grade, my father suggested she simply wasn't applying herself. They lived just 30 minutes away, but attended only half of her school performances, always with some important engagement, as an excuse for missing the others. My siblings fared better in our parents' eyes. My sister Allison became a surgeon, fulfilling my father's dream of having a doctor in the family. My brother Marcus followed my father into business, taking that executive position I had declined. Both were frequent guests of honor at my parents' country club dinners, their achievements regularly showcased to friends. Meanwhile, Emma and I received obligatory holiday invitations and occasional Sunday lunch offers when others canceled. Through all this, Emma discovered cooking. It started when she was 8, standing on a stool beside me as I fumbled through basic pasta dishes. While I could manage simple meals, Emma showed a natural intuition in the kitchen that amazed me. By 10, she had taken over most of our cooking, learning from cooking shows she recorded and YouTube videos she studied with scientific precision. Cooking became Emma's language, her way of processing emotions too complex for words. After difficult days at school, she would bake elaborate cookies. When she missed the school choir audition due to strep throat, she spent the weekend perfecting French onion soup. The kitchen transformed into her sanctuary, a place where disappointment and hurt could be transformed into something beautiful. Her first attempt at cooking for extended family came when she was 14. She volunteered to make dessert for Thanksgiving, arriving at my parents' house with a pumpkin cheesecake that took her 3 attempts to perfect. My father took one bite and commented that it was a bit too sweet before pushing it aside. I watched Emma's smile falter momentarily before she offered to make his coffee exactly how he liked it. That night, she researched less sweet dessert options for hours. Despite these moments, Emma never stopped trying to win their approval. When my mother's 65th birthday approached, Emma immediately volunteered to cook the entire meal. "I want to do something really special for Grandma," she told me one evening. "I could cook a dinner for everyone. A real, fancy dinner, with courses and everything." When I mentioned this to my parents during our monthly phone call, they seemed genuinely touched. My mother especially was delighted. "That would be wonderful, Baker," she said. "How thoughtful of Emma," my father added. "Well, I suppose that would save us the expense of a restaurant." The guest list quickly grew to 18 people. All the aunts, uncles, cousins, and my siblings' families were invited. Emma wasn't intimidated. In fact, she seemed energized by the challenge, immediately starting a planning binder with sections for recipes, shopping lists, and preparation timelines. I worried it was too much pressure, but the determination in her eyes stopped me from suggesting alternatives. "This is my chance to show everyone what I can really do, Dad," she said, her eyes bright with purpose. "Grandma will remember this birthday forever." I didn't have the heart to remind her that in our family, memories were often selective, especially when they involved Emma and me. Emma approached the menu planning with the seriousness of a military strategist. She spent weeks researching my mother's favorite foods, calling relatives secretly to gather information about dishes that had special meaning. She discovered that my mother had fond memories of her own grandmother's beef bourguignon, a dish no one had made for her in decades. She learned that my mother had once mentioned loving crab cakes during a trip to Maryland 20 years ago. Each discovery was carefully noted in her planning binder. The final menu was ambitious, even for experienced chefs. Appetizers of homemade crab cakes with lemon aioli and mushroom tartlets. A first course of French onion soup made with homemade beef stock. The main course featuring beef bourguignon with handmade pasta, accompanied by roasted vegetable medley, and dessert offering both a lemon tart and chocolate mousse cake. She even planned palate cleansers between courses and homemade bread. Emma accounted for everyone's dietary needs without complaint. Aunt Martha couldn't have dairy, so Emma researched alternatives for the dishes she would eat. Cousin Taylor was vegetarian, so Emma planned a separate mushroom bourguignon that mirrored the beef version. Uncle David was watching his sodium, so certain portions would be prepared with less salt. The detailed planning grid in her binder had color-coded sections for each special requirement. The shopping expedition required a full day off work for me. We hit 5 different stores to find every specialty ingredient on Emma's list. At the butcher shop, the owner raised his eyebrows when Emma confidently ordered specific cuts of beef, explaining exactly how they would be used. "You sure know your stuff, young lady," he commented, wrapping the meat with extra care after their detailed discussion of marbling. At the farmer's market, Emma inspected every vegetable with almost comical seriousness, rejecting carrots that weren't the right size and searching through mountains of mushrooms for the perfect specimens. The cost added up quickly, but seeing her enthusiasm, I couldn't bring myself to set limits. When we loaded the final bags into the car, our credit card was $600 lighter, but Emma's face glowed with anticipation. The first day of cooking began at 5:30 in the morning, 3 days before the party. I stumbled into the kitchen to find Emma already wearing her apron, hair tied back, with prep bowls arranged in precise rows on our counters. "Morning, Dad," she said brightly, as though dawn was her favorite time. "I'm starting the stocks today. They need to simmer for hours, and then they'll need to chill overnight so I can remove the fat tomorrow." Throughout that day, I became her sous chef, chopping mountains of vegetables according to her exacting specifications. My usually clumsy knife skills were corrected patiently, as Emma demonstrated the proper technique for dicing onions and mincing garlic. the kitchen filled with the rich aromas of simmering stocks and roasting bones as Emma prepared the foundations of her dishes. By evening, our refrigerator was filled with containers of amber-colored beef stock, clear chicken stock, and various components labeled with masking tape in Emma's neat handwriting. Caramelized onions for soup, reduced wine for bourguignon, herb oil for bread. Her organizational system was meticulous, with timelines posted on the refrigerator door showing what needed to be done when, throughout the day. Emma's phone buzzed with messages from family members. My mother called twice to ask about the menu, each time expressing her excitement. "It sounds just wonderful, Emma," she said. "I can't believe you're going to all this trouble for me." My sister Allison texted offering to pick up some store-bought bread if that would help. An offer Emma politely declined. My brother Marcus called to ask if Emma needed him to order some backup catering, just in case, which she pretended not to take as an insult. Through it all, Emma maintained her focus and positive attitude. That night, after 14 hours of cooking, Emma finally sat down, her face flushed from the heat of the kitchen. Looking at her planning binder, she checked off completed items with satisfaction. "Tomorrow's the big push," she said, her voice tired, but excited. "We start the bourguignon and prep all the components for the crab cakes." As I watched her study her recipes one last time before bed, I felt a surge of pride mixed with a familiar worry. Emma put so much of herself into pleasing people who had rarely shown her the same consideration. But I kept these thoughts to myself, not wanting to dim the light in her eyes. Day 2 began just as early, with Emma attacking her to-do list with renewed energy. Today was for the more complex preparations, starting with the beef bourguignon that would need long, slow cooking to develop its flavors. I watched in amazement as she seared the beef in batches, never crowding the pan, her movements confident and precise. She had printed recipes, but rarely consulted them, having memorized most steps. "The secret," she explained while deglazing the pan with burgundy wine, "is to build layers of flavor. Each step matters. If you rush, you can taste it in the final dish." Our kitchen had transformed into a professional workspace. Every surface held purpose-designated tools and ingredients, with Emma moving between stations with choreographed efficiency. The dining table had become an extension of the kitchen, holding cooling racks of pre-baked tart shells and the components for tomorrow's dessert assembly. Mid-morning brought a minor crisis when Emma discovered she was short on heavy cream for the chocolate mousse. I offered to run to the store, but Emma had already pivoted to plan B. "I'll adjust the ratios and use some creme fraiche I cultured last week," she said, quickly recalculating measurements. It might actually give the mousse more complexity. By afternoon, the house filled with intoxicating aromas. The bourguignon simmered gently on the stove, filling the air with notes of wine, herbs, and beef. Emma had moved on to preparing the crab cake mixture, her hands delicately picking through fresh lump crab meat to remove any shell fragments. Grandma mentioned having crab cakes on her 20th anniversary trip with Grandpa. Emma shared as she worked. She said they were the best thing she ever tasted. "I hope these come close." As I watched, Emma taught me cooking techniques I'd never known. She demonstrated how to check the temperature of oil without a thermometer, how to tell when a reduction had reached the right consistency, and how to balance flavors when something tasted flat. I was learning that my daughter possessed knowledge and skills far beyond her years, expertise that my parents had never bothered to notice. While Emma cooked, I focused on preparing the house. We had borrowed extra chairs from neighbors and rented a second table to accommodate all 18 guests. Emma had chosen a color scheme of blue and silver, my mother's favorites, and I hung streamers and arranged flowers according to Emma's precise instructions. We set up a display of family photos spanning decades, with my mother at the center of each carefully chosen memory. That evening, we worked together to create personalized place cards for each guest. Emma had researched calligraphy online and written each name in elegant script, while I mounted them on silver cardstock. As we worked at the kitchen table, with the bourguignon still simmering on low heat, Emma opened up about her hopes for the dinner. "I just want Grandma to be really happy," she said, focusing intently on forming perfect letters. "And maybe Grandpa will finally see that cooking isn't just a hobby. It's what I want to do with my life." Her comment referenced a tense conversation from months earlier, when my father had dismissed Emma's interest in culinary school. "Cooking is a fine hobby," he'd said dismissively, "but you need a real career to fall back on." I watched Emma now, seeing the determination in her eyes, and felt a familiar protective instinct rise. "They're going to be blown away," I assured her. "What you're creating here is beyond anything they could get at a restaurant." Emma smiled, but didn't look up from her work. "I hope so." We worked late into the night, finalizing preparations and setting the tables. Around midnight, I went to the kitchen for water and found Emma asleep at the table, her head resting on her planning binder. The stove timers had all been set. The refrigerator was organized with military precision, and every surface was spotlessly clean despite the day's intensive cooking. I gently lifted her, surprised at how light she still seemed, despite being nearly grown, and carried her to her bedroom. As I tucked her in, still wearing her sauce-splattered t-shirt, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: pride in her incredible talent and work ethic, worry that she was investing so much in seeking approval from people who had consistently undervalued her, and a quiet anger at my parents for never recognizing the extraordinary person their granddaughter had become. The third day dawned bright and clear. It was the day before the big party, and Emma was up even earlier than usual, her energy seemingly limitless, despite the grueling past 2 days. Today was for finishing touches and final preparations. "Everything's on schedule," she announced, as I stumbled into the kitchen at 6:30. The bourguignon developed perfectly overnight. The desserts need final assembly, and we start the soup and crab cakes today. The house already looked transformed. The dining area gleamed with polished silverware and crystal glasses we'd borrowed from a neighbor. Emma had created a stunning centerpiece featuring photos of my mother throughout her life, surrounded by her favorite flowers. Every detail had been considered, from the carefully pressed napkins to the typed menus at each place setting. By noon, Emma gave me a proud tour of all she had accomplished. The refrigerator was packed with completed dishes and components, ready for final cooking. The beef bourguignon had been transferred to serving dishes, ready to be reheated tomorrow. The chocolate mousse cake was a work of art, decorated with chocolate curls and gold leaf Emma had specially ordered. The lemon tarts were cooling, their surface perfectly caramelized. "Tomorrow we just need to finish the soup, cook the crab cakes fresh, and warm everything else," Emma explained, her face flushed with pride and exhaustion. "Everything's timed, so it will all be ready 15 minutes before everyone arrives." I marveled at her planning and execution. At 17, Emma showed a level of dedication and skill that put my 36 years of life experience to shame. Though visibly tired, her eyes shone with anticipation for tomorrow's event. It was at precisely 1:27 in the afternoon when my phone buzzed with a text message. I was helping Emma organize serving platters and almost ignored it. When I glanced at the screen and saw it was from my father, I absently opened it, expecting a question about timing for tomorrow. The message read, "We've decided to celebrate at Riverside Restaurant tomorrow night instead. It's adults only. Sorry for the late notice. Dad." I read it 3 times, certain I had misunderstood. The words remained unchanged. My stomach clenched as I looked up at Emma, who was happily arranging fresh herbs for garnishes, completely unaware that her 3 days of extraordinary effort had just been casually dismissed in a text message. I stepped into the hallway, closed the door, and immediately called my father. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice casual, as if he hadn't just detonated a bomb in our lives. "Hello, Baker. Dad, what's going on? I just got your text about changing Mom's birthday to a restaurant." "Yes. We thought Riverside would be more appropriate. They have that private room with the river view. Your mother's always wanted to try it, but Dad..." Emma has been cooking for 3 days straight. The house is decorated. The food is made. Everything is ready for tomorrow. There was a pause before he responded, his tone slightly irritated. Well, we actually decided on the restaurant several days ago. I meant to tell you earlier. The implication that he had known while Emma continued her preparations made my blood boil. I struggled to keep my voice level. Several days ago? Dad, why wouldn't you tell us immediately? Emma has put her heart and soul into this dinner. She shouldn't have gone to so much trouble, he replied dismissively. It's just a birthday dinner. And frankly, Baker, 18 people is a lot to handle in a home kitchen. This is for the best. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. Dad, you don't understand. Emma has created an incredible menu. She's made everything from scratch. We've spent hundreds of dollars on ingredients. Well, I'm sorry about that. But the reservation is made. Everyone else has been notified. And they're planning to meet us there at 7. I'm sure you can save the food or something. I could hear my mother in the background, her voice too distant to make out words. My father covered the phone briefly, then returned. Your mother says she's sorry about the confusion. We'll see you tomorrow night at 7. Just you, though. The restaurant has a strict policy, and this is an adult celebration. The casual exclusion of Emma, after everything she had done, left me momentarily speechless. When I found my voice, it was unnaturally calm. I'll have to get back to you on that, Dad. I need to talk to Emma first. What's there to talk about? It's your mother's 65th birthday, Baker. She expects you to be there. I ended the call without responding, leaning against the wall and closing my eyes. How was I going to tell Emma? The kitchen door opened, and she peeked out, flour dusting her cheek. Dad? Is everything okay? Who was on the phone? I looked at my daughter, her eyes bright with excitement about tomorrow, and felt physically ill at what I had to tell her. Leading her to the living room couch, I sat beside her, still searching for words that wouldn't crush her. Emma. That was Grandpa on the phone. There's been a change of plans for tomorrow. Her expression shifted instantly, sensing my tension. What kind of change? Taking a deep breath, I forced myself to maintain eye contact. They've decided to have the party at Riverside Restaurant instead of here. Emma stared at me, confusion clear on her face. But everything's ready here. All the food, the decorations. I know, sweetheart. I told him that. Can we just bring everything there? She asked, her mind already problem-solving. I shook my head slowly. It's a restaurant, Em. They won't allow outside food. And it's adults only. The last part hit her visibly, like a physical blow. She went completely still, processing the full implication. Adults only, she repeated flatly. So after cooking for 3 days, I'm not even invited to Grandma's birthday. Emma, I'm so sorry. This isn't right. And I told Grandpa that. Her expression cycled rapidly through confusion, hurt, and finally settled on a terrible blank acceptance. Did I do something wrong? Is that why they changed it? No. Absolutely not, I assured her quickly. Grandpa said they decided days ago but failed to tell us. This has nothing to do with you. Emma stood suddenly and walked to the kitchen doorway, looking at the counters filled with food she had prepared with such care. For a moment, she said nothing, just surveyed the physical evidence of her rejected effort. We should just throw it all away, she said finally, her voice frighteningly devoid of emotion. What's the point of keeping it? Before I could respond, she turned and walked quickly to her bedroom. The soft click of her door closing was somehow worse than if she had slammed it. I remained on the couch, staring at my phone, rage and disappointment warring within me. For nearly 30 minutes, I sat motionless, my mind racing through every possible response to the situation. I could insist my parents reconsider. I could take Emma to the restaurant anyway. I could call the other family members and explain the situation, hoping they would pressure my parents to change their minds. None of these options felt right. The damage was already done. Even if my parents relented now, Emma would know it was done out of obligation, not appreciation. The joy she had put into this celebration had been thoroughly extinguished. From down the hall, I could hear the muffled sounds of Emma crying. The quiet, controlled sobs broke something in me. My daughter, who had worked tirelessly to create something beautiful for people who couldn't be bothered to honor that effort, was now blaming herself for their thoughtlessness. I looked again at the kitchen, at the evidence of Emma's extraordinary skill and dedication. All that food, all that effort, all that love she had poured into every dish. The thought of it going to waste seemed like the final insult. That's when an alternative began forming in my mind. I reached for my phone and scrolled to a contact I hadn't called in months. Jerome Washington was the director of the community center where I occasionally volunteered design services. He answered on the second ring. "Baker. Long time no talk, man. What's going on?" "Jerome, I have an unusual question. If someone wanted to donate a home-cooked gourmet meal for about 20 people, would the community center be able to use it tomorrow evening?" There was a pause before Jerome responded, curiosity in his voice. "That's definitely unusual. What kind of meal are we talking about?" I explained the situation briefly, describing some of the dishes Emma had prepared. Jerome's tone changed immediately. "Man, that's rough. Your poor daughter. But yes, we could absolutely host something. We have that multi-purpose room with the kitchen. What if we made it a special dinner for some of the families in our transitional housing program? They rarely get treated to anything like this." The idea felt right immediately. "That would be perfect, Jerome. Can we use the space around 6 tomorrow? Consider it done. I'll call Sandra at the housing program right now." After ending the call with Jerome, I made several more calls. First to the neighbors, who had been so supportive of Emma and me over the years. Then, to the parents of Emma's closest friends. Finally, to a few of my coworkers who had become like extended family to us. By the time I finished the last call, I had confirmations from over 20 people who would attend our impromptu community dinner on less than 24 hours' notice. My phone rang again. The screen showed my father's name. Taking a deep breath, I answered. "Hello, Dad. Baker. I'm calling to confirm you'll be at the restaurant tomorrow. 7 o'clock sharp. Your mother is expecting everyone to be there." His tone carried the assumption that, of course, I would fall in line, as always expected in our family. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I felt completely certain of my response. "I'm sorry, Dad, but I won't be attending. Emma and I already have plans now." The silence on the other end lasted several seconds before my father spoke again, his voice tight with controlled anger. "What do you mean you have plans? These plans were just made. Your mother will be extremely disappointed. It's her 65th birthday. Baker." "Yes, it is. And Emma spent 3 days cooking an incredible meal for her, which you all knew about and encouraged. Then you changed plans without telling us, until the last minute, and excluded Emma entirely. So we've made alternative arrangements for the food and our evening." "You're being ridiculous," my father snapped. "This is family, Baker. Your mother expects you to be there." "Emma is family too, Dad. My priority has to be her right now. She's a child. She'll get over it." This is exactly the problem with how you've raised her. Always treating her like a little adult, instead of teaching her that sometimes adults make the decisions. I felt a calm certainty as I responded. "Dad, I need to go now. Please wish Mom a happy birthday from both of us tomorrow." I ended the call before he could respond, knowing any further conversation would only escalate tensions without changing anyone's mind. Turning toward Emma's room, I took a moment to compose myself before knocking softly on her door. "Emma, can I come in?" After a moment of silence, I heard a quiet yes, opening the door. I found Emma sitting cross-legged on her bed, surrounded by cooking books and printouts of recipes. Her eyes were red, but she had stopped crying. She looked up at me with an expression of resigned hurt that no 17-year-old should have to feel. "I've been thinking about what to do with all the food," I said, sitting on the edge of her bed. "And I have an idea, but I want to know what you think." Emma just looked at me, waiting. I called Jerome at the community center. They're willing to let us use their multi-purpose room tomorrow evening to host a dinner for families from the transitional housing program. I've also invited the Millers, the Jacksons, the Carters, and some of your friends and their parents. We'd be looking at about 25 people total. Emma's expression remained guarded. "You want to serve the food to strangers?" "Not exactly strangers. Neighbors, friends, and yes, some families who could really use a special meal. People who would genuinely appreciate what you've created." She looked down at the cookbook open on her lap. "It was supposed to be for Grandma." "I know, sweetheart. And what happened isn't fair. But you put so much love and skill into this food. It deserves to be enjoyed and appreciated." For several long moments, Emma was silent, absently tracing the edge of a recipe card with her finger. When she finally looked up, there was a fragile determination in her eyes. "We'd need to adjust some of the portions. And I'd have to rethink the serving style, since we won't have Grandma's dining room." I felt a surge of relief hearing her engage with the idea. The community center has a decent kitchen for reheating and final prep, and a nice big room we can decorate. Emma nodded slowly, her mind visibly shifting to the logistics of the new plan. "I guess a buffet style would work better for that many people. And we could do smaller portions of the desserts so everyone gets to try both." "Exactly. And you know what? These people won't take it for granted. They'll actually appreciate the incredible work you've done." A tiny spark returned to Emma's eyes as she reached for her planning binder. "I'll need to recalculate the timing for everything. And we should probably get some disposable containers for leftovers." As she began jotting notes, I saw the first signs of her resilience returning. The hurt wasn't gone, but she was finding a way forward, a way to salvage meaning from her efforts. In that moment, I felt more pride in my daughter than I could possibly express. The next day moved in a blur of activity. We transported all the food to the community center in multiple car trips, converting the multi-purpose room into a makeshift dining hall. Emma reworked her serving plan, adapting to the different kitchen and the buffet-style presentation we now needed. Friends arrived early to help. The Millers brought extra serving dishes and chafing dishes to keep food warm. Mrs. Carter, who taught art at the local high school, helped us create simple but elegant decorations for the room. Emma's friends Jasmine and Tyler set up a beverage station with homemade lemonade and iced tea. The original formal sit-down dinner plan evolved into a more relaxed buffet arrangement, but Emma insisted on maintaining high standards for presentation. Each dish was garnished beautifully, labeled with handwritten cards explaining what it was. The dessert table became a particular focus, with the chocolate mousse cake and lemon tarts displayed like treasures in a museum. By 5:30, everything was ready. The room had been transformed, with blue and silver decorations, echoing Emma's original color scheme. Round tables were set with paper tablecloths, and simple centerpieces made from flowers, donated by a local florist who heard our story. It wasn't the formal elegance Emma had planned for my mother's dining room, but it had a warm, welcoming charm that felt perfectly right. At 6 o'clock, the guests began arriving. Sandra, from the Transitional Housing Program, brought 8 families, including several children who gasped audibly at the sight of the dessert table. Our neighbors came dressed in their Sunday best, treating the occasion with the respect Emma's effort deserved. Emma's school friends arrived with their parents, all eager to support her. My coworkers completed the group, bringing additional side dishes and drinks to supplement what we had. When everyone had arrived, Jerome called for attention and introduced Emma as the chef who had created the evening's meal. She stood nervously at the front of the room, her hands twisted together in front of her. "Thank you all for coming," she began softly. "This meal was originally planned for my grandmother's birthday, but plans changed. I'm actually really glad that you're all here instead. Everything was made from scratch over the past 3 days. I hope you enjoy it." The simple sincerity of her words touched everyone. As people lined up for food, I watched Emma anxiously observing their reactions. The first compliments began almost immediately. "This is the best soup I've ever had," declared Mr. Jackson, a retired chef himself. "The depth of flavor is extraordinary." A woman from the housing program approached Emma with tears in her eyes. "My mother used to make beef bourguignon before she passed. I haven't tasted anything like this in 20 years. Thank you for bringing back that memory." One by one, people sought Emma out to praise specific dishes, ask about techniques, or simply express their appreciation. A young boy, perhaps 7 years old, tugged on Emma's sleeve and solemnly informed her that her chocolate cake was better than birthday cake, which he considered the highest possible praise. Throughout the evening, I watched my daughter transform. The hurt and disappointment that had weighed her down gradually lifted as she received the genuine appreciation her effort deserved. She moved through the room explaining dishes, accepting compliments with growing confidence, even laughing at jokes from her friends who had appointed themselves her sous chefs for the evening. Midway through the dinner, something unexpected began happening. Emma's friend Jasmine, an avid social media user, had been posting photos of the food and the event, explaining the story behind it. Her posts were being shared rapidly, with comments pouring in supporting Emma and expressing outrage at my parents' behavior. My colleague David, whose wife worked at the local newspaper, had brought her along. Rebecca spent part of the evening interviewing Emma about her cooking and taking professional photos of the dishes. "This is a story worth telling," she explained to me quietly. "A talented young chef turning disappointment into community service." As the evening progressed, the gathering took on an almost magical quality. Strangers became friends over shared appreciation of Emma's food. Children who had arrived shy and uncertain now played together between the tables. The room hummed with conversation and laughter. Jerome pulled me aside at one point, his expression serious. "Baker, this is one of the most special events we've ever hosted here. These families from the housing program never get treated like this. You have no idea what this means to them." By the end of the evening, every dish had been enthusiastically consumed. Guests helped with cleanup, and as Emma had suggested, we packed leftovers in containers for families to take home. The children made a handmade thank you card for Emma, covered in colorful drawings and heartfelt messages. Before people departed, Jerome once again called for attention. "I want to propose a toast to our incredible chef, Emma. Not only has she shared her extraordinary talent with us tonight, but she's also agreed to teach a 6-week cooking workshop for our youth program starting next month." This was news to me. I looked at Emma in surprise as everyone applauded. She blushed, but stood a little straighter, nodding in confirmation. As the last guests left, Emma and I sat alone in the community center, surrounded by empty serving dishes and the remnants of decorations. She looked tired, but peaceful, in a way she hadn't since the devastating text message. "How are you feeling?" I asked gently. Emma considered the question seriously before answering. "I'm still sad about Grandma and Grandpa, but this felt important, somehow, like my cooking actually mattered to people." "It absolutely did. You gave these people something special tonight, Emma." She nodded slowly. "One of the moms from the housing program asked for my email. She wants her daughter to learn cooking from me. She said I was inspiring." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You are inspiring. I've always known that. I'm just glad other people got to see it too. As we drove home that night, Emma's phone constantly buzzed with notifications. Jasmine's posts had gone locally viral, with hundreds of supportive comments and shares. The community's response to Emma's story had created a wave of goodwill that neither of us had anticipated. I glanced at my own phone and saw 6 missed calls from my parents and siblings. I turned it off without checking the messages. Whatever they had to say could wait until tomorrow. Tonight belonged to Emma's triumph. The next morning, we both slept until almost 10, exhausted from the emotional and physical demands of the previous days. When we finally emerged from our rooms, we discovered our phones overflowing with messages. Rebecca's article had appeared in the online edition of the local paper, titled, "Teen Chef Turns Family Disappointment into Community Feast." It featured beautiful photos of Emma's dishes and quotes from attendees praising both her cooking and her generosity. The story had been shared hundreds of times, with comments, sections full of support for Emma and criticism of the unnamed family members who had changed plans. Among the messages were several from my siblings. Allison's text read, "Just saw the article. Is this about Mom's birthday? What happened? Call me." Marcus had left a voicemail expressing confusion and asking for clarification. My mother had sent a single text. "We need to talk. Please call when you can." Emma scanned through her own messages. Her expression, a mix of disbelief and pleasure. The culinary program director at the community college saw the article. "He wants me to consider their youth development program this summer." "That's amazing, Em," I said, genuinely thrilled for her. "You absolutely deserve it." We spent the morning responding to supportive messages and enjoying a late breakfast, deliberately avoiding discussion of my parents. Around noon, I finally called my mother, stepping onto the back porch for privacy. She answered immediately. "Baker? What's going on?" "There's an article in the paper about Emma cooking for homeless families instead of coming to my birthday." I took a deep breath. "The article doesn't mention you by name, Mom. But yes, after Dad texted to cancel and exclude Emma, we donated the food she had spent 3 days preparing to families who would appreciate it. We didn't cancel. We just changed venues," my mother protested, though her voice lacked conviction. "Your father thought a restaurant would be more appropriate." "Mom, Emma spent 3 days cooking. The house was decorated. Everything was ready. And then you decided on adults only, at a restaurant, without even telling us, until the last minute." There was a long pause before my mother spoke again, her voice quieter. "I didn't know she had gone to so much trouble. Your father handled the communications." I let that sit for a moment, unwilling to let her off the hook entirely. "Will you be home this afternoon? I think we need to have this conversation in person." "Yes," she replied. "We'll be home all day." 15 hours after our community dinner ended, Emma and I stood on my parents' doorstep. We had decided together that she should come, that this conversation needed to include everyone. Before I could ring the bell, the door swung open to reveal my father, his expression stormy. "Get in here," he said without greeting. "The phone has been ringing all morning, with people asking about this newspaper story." We stepped into the foyer, where my mother waited with an expression of distress. To my surprise, my siblings were also present. Allison sat rigidly on the living room couch, while Marcus paced by the window. The tension in the room was palpable. My father closed the door firmly and turned to us. "Would you like to explain why you've embarrassed this family in the local paper?" Before I could respond, Emma spoke up, her voice steady despite her obvious nervousness. "The article doesn't mention any of you by name. That's hardly the point," my father snapped. "People in our circle know it was your grandmother's birthday yesterday. They can put 2 and 2 together." I placed a hand on Emma's shoulder. "Dad, I don't think we're the ones who should be explaining ourselves here." My mother stepped forward, her eyes fixed on Emma. "Sweetheart, I had no idea you had gone to such lengths for my birthday. The food in those photographs looks absolutely beautiful." "It was beautiful," Emma replied quietly. I worked really hard on it. Allison moved from the couch to join us in the foyer. What exactly happened here? The article says Emma spent 3 days cooking for a family event that was canceled last minute. My father made a dismissive gesture. Nothing was canceled. We simply changed to a restaurant venue. It was more appropriate for your mother's 65th birthday, and made it adults only, I added pointedly, effectively uninviting the person who had spent 3 days preparing a gourmet meal for you. Marcus stopped pacing. Wait, you knew Emma was cooking and still changed it to a restaurant? Without telling her until the last minute? A flicker of discomfort crossed my father's face. We made the reservation several days ago. I meant to tell Baker sooner. Several days ago, I repeated. While Emma was already shopping and cooking, you had already decided to go elsewhere. My mother looked genuinely distressed now. Richard, you told me you'd spoken to Baker about the change when we made the reservation. An uncomfortable silence fell, as my father adjusted his glasses. A nervous habit from childhood. I was going to tell them. It just slipped my mind with everything else going on. Emma, who had been quiet, finally spoke up. Why adults only, Grandpa? Was I not supposed to be at Grandma's birthday at all? The directness of her question seemed to catch my father off guard. He fumbled for words. The restaurant has a policy. It's a very upscale establishment. That's not true, Allison interjected. I've taken my kids to Riverside before. They don't have an adults-only policy. My father's face reddened slightly. Well, I thought it would be a more sophisticated evening without children present. I'm 17, Emma said quietly. Hardly a child. My mother moved toward Emma, reaching for her hands. Emma, I am so sorry. I had no idea this was happening. The dinner last night looked absolutely wonderful in the photos. It was, I confirmed. Every dish was exceptional. Professional quality. The community center director said it was the most special event they've ever hosted. Emma straightened her shoulders slightly. I worked really hard on everything, Grandma. I researched all your favorite foods. I found out about the beef bourguignon your grandmother used to make. I learned how to make crab cakes like the ones you had in Maryland 20 years ago. My mother's eyes widened. You did that for me? I wanted it to be special, Emma said simply. The room fell silent again, as the full weight of the situation seemed to finally register with everyone present. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Even my father looked uncomfortable, though he still stood stiffly by the door. Allison turned to our father. Dad, this was really badly handled. Emma deserves an apology. My father shifted uncomfortably. I didn't intend to upset anyone. I simply made what I thought was the best decision for your mother's birthday, without considering Emma at all, I pointed out, or the work she'd already done. I didn't realize it was such a production, he said defensively. Emma finally stepped forward, her voice stronger than I'd expected. It wasn't a production, Grandpa. It was a gift. I spent 3 days cooking because I love Grandma and wanted to do something special for her. I missed 2 days of school to prepare everything perfectly. And then I found out I wasn't even invited to the celebration. The raw honesty in her words seemed to finally break through my father's defenses. His expression softened slightly. I suppose I didn't fully consider your feelings, he admitted reluctantly. Or the incredible work she put in, I added. Or the money we spent on ingredients. My mother wiped tears from her eyes. Emma, what you did for those families instead was wonderful. But I'm heartbroken that I missed your cooking. That article said it was extraordinary. It was, Marcus confirmed. I called 2 people who were there last night. They said it was the best meal they'd ever had. Emma's posture relaxed slightly at the validation. I kept the recipes. I could cook for you another time if you wanted. I would love that, my mother said quickly. And this time, we'll come to you. No last-minute changes. My father finally stepped away from the door, his usual authoritative manner somewhat diminished. Perhaps we could all come. The whole family. to properly appreciate Emma's cooking. It wasn't quite the direct apology Emma deserved, but from my father, it was significant concession. Emma seemed to understand this, nodding slightly in acknowledgement. "I'd like that," she said, "but I need to know it won't be changed or canceled again. It takes a lot of work and planning." "It won't be," my mother assured her, shooting a meaningful look at my father, who nodded in agreement. As the conversation continued, the initial tension gradually dissipated. My siblings shared their regrets about missing Emma's cooking. My mother asked detailed questions about the dishes, genuinely interested in Emma's techniques. Even my father eventually asked about the beef bourguignon preparation, admitting he'd been impressed by the photos in the article. Before we left, something unexpected happened. Jerome from the community center called Emma to tell her that a local restaurant owner had been among those who read the article. He had contacted Jerome asking for an introduction to Emma, interested in discussing a part-time apprenticeship in his kitchen. As Emma excitedly shared this news, I watched my father's expression change. For perhaps the first time, he seemed to recognize that Emma's cooking wasn't just a hobby, but a genuine talent with real potential. His usual dismissive attitude was replaced with something that looked almost like respect. On the drive home, Emma was quiet, processing the emotional events of the day. Finally, she turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Dad, I'm still hurt about what happened, but I think something good came out of it anyway." "The apprenticeship opportunity?" She nodded. "That, and the cooking workshops at the community center. But also, I think Grandpa finally sees that cooking is my thing. You know? Not just something I play at." I reached over to squeeze her hand. "I think you're right. And I'm incredibly proud of how you handled everything. Most people would have just thrown in the towel when things went wrong." Emma smiled slightly. "I learned that from you. You never gave up when things got hard after Mom left." Her words hit me with unexpected force. All these years, I had worried about providing the right example as a single parent, never fully confident I was doing enough. Hearing that Emma had taken strength from my efforts meant more than she could know. The past few days had shown me something important about family. True family isn't defined by biology or obligation, but by who shows up, who appreciates effort, who celebrates success, and who stands beside you in disappointment. Sometimes those people are blood relatives. Sometimes they're neighbors, friends, or even strangers coming together around a community table. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have gone to the restaurant to keep the peace, or stood by your child who had put in so much effort? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you've ever had to choose between family obligation and doing what's right for your child, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about navigating complex family dynamics. Thank you for listening to our story, and remember that sometimes life's biggest disappointments can lead to unexpected blessings if we're brave enough to forge a new path.